Hey guys, this is Andrew with FloryPB. It's been a little bit since we worked on these markers themselves. This was the G7 Fly as part of the trio of markers that we were doing. We tested the other two markers and they were shooting great. Everything was going good, but this one was shooting very low velocity. Alright guys, we're test firing the A4 that we just rebuilt. And I got it tuned in. Beautiful numbers. Just shooting beautifully. My tank's getting a little low on air, but what a great chronograph too. Alright guys, that's the A4 shooting. Alright guys, we're going to shoot the 05 speed next. Almost out of air. She was shooting great as well. Yeah, a little dead on my air tank. So we're gonna do a little troubleshooting and see what's going on. We're gonna start by checking our dwell, see if that's working right. Then we're gonna check the LPR pressure, but I know the LPR pressure is right because I set it. I'm just gonna do it on camera. And we're gonna check the HPR pressure and make sure the mini reg's coming up to the pressure it's supposed to. If the dwell is set correctly, the LPR is set correctly, and the mini reg set correctly, then the other portion of this equation is I gotta check, make sure there's nothing hindering the valve, which I don't believe there is. Then the last thing would be the RAM. The RAM would need to be rebuilt. We're gonna hope it's not that, because these are not exactly supposed to be rebuilt. They're not gonna be easy, but be a much longer series with that one if it happens. But first, let's pull the grip frame off, or let's pull the grips off and check what our dwell is. I really don't need to check it, but let's just make sure. This is a G7 Fly, so a safe dwell is around 9 or 10. I might make sure it's about 10 just to really make sure that the dwell is not going to be our issue. Let's bring it to safe. Dwell is at 10, so our dwell is good. So we're going to put this back on. And we're done with the dwell. Dwell's at 10. That's more than adequate for this. So next we'll check the LPR first. Now this should be to around 55. That's where I like to keep this, and a little bit on the higher side, but I don't like having inconsistencies because the LPR is a little too low, the dwell is a little too low. You can gain a little bit of efficiency that way, but with these things and the way paint is now, it's just simpler to have it shoot correctly. Less of a headache. This is a low pressure tank, set to about 500 PSI. The mini reg should theoretically go up to like 250, maybe 300 if it's really shooting hot, but maybe 220 to 250 is the range we want to be in. So we are right at 50 PSI, which is pretty good, especially because our dwell is 10. I could try to get to 55, but I don't think that's our issue either. And I figured out what happened with this because it got a little cross-threaded. Basically, this has been an ongoing problem, I think, with this marker, was low velocity. So someone cranked the mini reg all the way out to the point where it missed the threads, and it kinked it down and tore a couple of the front threads off on it. Basically what I did is I just cleaned it up with the proper tap just to get a little more wow. There we go. You're in there. Just to get a little more bite in the threads like they were supposed to have in the first place. And same thing as the other LPR tool I have, I just put a bigger gauge on it. It's forward facing. It's not going to work the best now that I'm thinking about this more, but there's only so much we can do, right? Let's see, is there going to be a way to hold you in? Just thinking about this before I make a mistake on this one. Let me put something together real quick to just press on the valve and still let air in here. Hold on a second. So, looked around real quick. I have this little brass elbow that will slip over that real nice to keep it lined up. And I can put a little pressure on with this. We're not going to want to shoot it this way, but we can see what the LPR can, or what the high pressure regulator can get to. Not ideal, but if I had to do this more often, I'd make a little extra tool for it. So the LPR should be set, or the HPR should be set pretty low right now. I think I killed my O-ring. Nah. Get another O-ring real quick. Right. Set about 90 psi right now. But that's not surprising. We kept it pretty low there. So if you can see that, let's try to focus on it. You bring it all the way out, it can get to about 250 psi, which is about all it needs. So I don't think that's the issue either, which really makes me, it's really sad, but I think it might be the RAM itself. I can test it before I start rebuilding this and grab a RAM that I know works, which might be the next step. But that's going to be the next step in this troubleshooting, is working with the RAM itself. That. I just gotta do it. So everything's good in there. So let's check this one more time. This isn't leaking. This isn't our issue. Our issue is probably RAM based. Thread that in. which is not as ideal. It's a pain in the ass to get the ram out. It's even more of a pain in the ass to actually get to the O-rings inside of the ram. But I think that's going to be our next step. So we got to pull the trigger frame, not all the way off, just enough to get to the pin. We got to pull the back plate. Let's pull that first. Now I'm thinking about it. Turn the power off. We want to be super gentle with this because we don't want to cut the eyes. This does have that nicer set of eyes in it though. We still don't want to damage it. Even though they're a little more robust, they can take a little more abuse, but no point in doing it. Hold the frame. Slide it up nice and easy. Get that pin out. I'm going to put the frame back. Make sure everything's in. I'm not pinching anything. Not going to tighten that hard. I'm just going to put it in there like that. Oop. Someone should have told me. Gotta get the bolt out. All right. So unfortunately, I bet this ram, the O-ring in it is a little dead. It feels pretty nice still, but can't argue with results when it's only shooting about 250, 260 when your dwell's at 10, your OPR's at 50, and we can get up the HPR up to 250. So if you see here, the concept with this is they pin this ram in, then they peen over the metal right here. Let's try to zoom in for you. If you look right here, this is the hole that the pin goes in that we use to put it on the marker. Then this pin gets set in, and then they take it and they whack this with a punch to peen the aluminum over to lock this piece of metal in right here, to lock this piece of steel in. The hope is that maybe if we get a Dremel, we can Dremel off the peen part right here, the part that's been knocked over, and hopefully this is loose enough we can get this thing out, maybe with a magnet, maybe we gotta drill a very tiny hole in it. But we gotta get this pin out without damaging the rest of the ram. And then we can pull this piece out. And then it gets even harder because then we gotta bore the back of this thing out in order to get this shaft out the front, because this piece gets pressed in here and we don't want to screw with this front seal. So we gotta screw with the back of it instead. At that point we have access to the ram, then we gotta machine a sleeve that this fits into, slide everything back in, drill a hole, put this back, and it's good as new, which is, you know, a lot easier said than done. Let's try a different ram at this point in time, and then we'll get to this job later. Let me go grab another ram real quick and bring you guys back out. Alright, so here's my donor RAM for the time being. I want to lube it up, get it in the marker, shoot the marker, make sure it's shooting to 300 feet per second, and then we know it's the RAM, absolutely. So then we'll fix this RAM, polish it up even better, because the shafts on these leave a little bit to be desired. Polish it up a little better, make it just a nicer product, and slap it back in before we send this back. But I just want to make sure I'm not going down the wrong direction. I don't want to open that RAM unless it's critical to do so. This one's dry. It's been sitting in a box for a long time, but it's not worn out yet. Get nice and lubed up. A little too easy there. Slip that off. Make sure that feels okay. Pins here somewhere. Make sure that pin's going in. Make sure that seats well. Don't need to over tighten those at all, just tighten them just enough. Slip that back on. Put the little screw in. Make sure that's out fully. All right. That closes well still. It's a little tight one there. That comes well there. All right. I do not. Unfortunately, it's pouring outside. Feels hard. We're gonna have to take a couple shots over the chronograph. Make sure it's shooting to velocity the way it should be. And if it is, then we know we gotta replace this ram, or we gotta rebuild this ram rather. And that's gonna be the next step. Stay tuned for that part. All right, so we're back. We tested the G7 Fly with the donor ram in it, and we got it to shoot up to velocity. I forgot to record that when I went outside with it. I'm sorry about that. But we know this ram is a bit of an issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to open it up. And my method that I'm going to try to use here is we're going to use a Dremel tool. And we want to Dremel away at the peened over piece of aluminum. So I'm going to bring this in tight here. Try to get all the lights on I need. I've lit up better. This brings me out a little far, but if we can focus on there, the aluminum gets peened over right here. So they just take a chisel and they whack it just to knock it down, just to force set this pin in place. And what we're going to try to do is take the Dremel tool and just get rid of the peened spot. And I see now I was able to rotate the actual pin now that I knocked that peen off a little bit. So let's try to get it out with a magnet. Not quite there yet. Starting to move, so that's nice. Means it's not really tight in there. Look at this, a little tighter here. So I think I got a little peening left on the side there. Focus. And we got the pin out. So next we gotta get this off. And this is loose now, which is good. Step one is getting that pin out. And next would be to get that hammer off. Ooh, it's a little tight. Alright, so now we push that in, which is fine. Let's try and knock that back out. So this piece is stuck in, which is no surprise. Means this whole thing has to come forward. Push that down, and we need to machine away this material here until we can slip everything out, and then make some kind of spacer and put it all back. So it's definitely a tricky process, but we started it by taking this pin out first, just using a little Dremel action there. And we can eventually put the pin back in after we make everything else work with it and we make it rebuildable. So that's it for down here. Next we got to do up on the lathe. And I'll get it set up there and try to get some lights on it so we can see what's happening. Okay guys, so we're up here with the big lathe. And we have the ram chucked in to the 3-jaw chuck. We're going to use a drill bit to start, and we're gonna have to switch over to a reamer and or a boring bar to try to get it exactly perfect so we can slip everything out the back without using more material. We're gonna make the hole as big as we can with a drill bit just because it's simpler for us, and we'll go from there. We're gonna turn it on, shoot a little WD-40, bring it in gently, and I hope the lighting is good for you guys. I hope the sound isn't too hard because I'm pretty close to the microphone. Too slow there. So I can see in here, and we have a long way to go. So let me grab another drill bit. Didn't think about that before I started. Hold on a second. We're just going to keep stepping up in size until we look like we're getting close. I'll pop the camera off real quick and I'll see what I can do with a boring bar to get that in there. It's kind of a tiny hole, but we'll make something work. Obviously I'm not used to filming up here, so the camera's kind of in my way. That's looking pretty good. Let's see what we can do. So there's still a little ridge in there, but it's getting closer to coming out. If you guys can see that so well. It's getting close. I'm going to switch over to something else besides the drill bit right now. Hold on a second. Alright guys, I don't typically bore holes this tiny, but I chopped up an old boring bar I had to make this kind of tiny one here that fits in the hole. I had to stack it up really weird just to get it here. I think I'm almost done ready for my pass. Sorry about that. This is going to be a little tricky to do. Let me spin her. Lube in it. So the finish looks good, even though the bar's a little screwy. The finish feels okay. Grab this little tool here and need to go a little more before I'm flush in. I'm just using this to feel the ridge in there. There's still a little bit of a ridge. Should really bore the other way so I can see it, but let me work around the camera. Let's take off another 5 thou. I should work on this side. Still a little bit of a ridge. Let's make sure we're straight. So the hole's not perfectly centered, not super shocking with the quality of some of the other stuff here. It's pretty straight in this, so that could actually be good. The last drill bit I used, by the way, was a 13/32. I just took about 10 thou out with the boring bar. Oh, all right. Result. Let's zoom out so Don't leave those in your chuck. So that piece came out. Bang. All right. Pull this off real quick. Alright, so we got everything out. I just washed it down a little bit. We are going to polish the shit out of this shaft, get new O-rings on it, get a new bumper ring there, put a new O-ring on this one as well. We machined that very nice. I'm super happy with the surface finish in there. It's a little bit off camber, but we didn't go past this port here, which is a big deal, not going past this port. I didn't actually state that in the beginning. I wonder if I can get the light in there for you. I don't think it's hard to see with the light. But if you don't go past this port, then this rear O-ring never touches the new stuff. We're going to polish all that up regardless inside. That we turn into raw aluminum. And we eventually have to make a little sleeve that fits in this hole nice and snug and allows this part to have a collar again. And then we got to put this back in the end of the day. Maybe with a set screw. We'll figure out what we're going to do with that. I want to keep it so it's still adjustable. But yeah, this is a G7 Ram that has been taken apart, and it's on its way to being a rebuildable Ram. Yeah, it's still nice and smooth in that area there. We're going to make it real smooth. We're going to polish up the brass way here. We'll polish up the shaft, and we'll go over that whole process. You're going to make this probably one of the nicer Rams you're going to see in one of these. So next, we're going back to the basement. This is the big old lathe. And yeah, first view in the shop for you guys to see. Okay guys, day 2 with the lathe. We first have to make an aluminum insert sleeve that's going to fit back into here. And it's going to have a hole in it to allow this portion to ride in it well. And we got to cut this out. This is just a piece of stock I had left over. It's hanging a little farther out than I would have liked, but it's enough for what we need right now. I'm going to take a decent cut, check where I am again, and then we'll do the final cut, a finishing cut on it to make a nice smooth shape that hopefully fits in here perfectly. And that's our intended goal with this one. Just check where we are. So like 0.445 inches. I don't know if you can see that. We're looking to get 0.427, anything from like 0.425 to 0.427. Not the ideal way to measure this, but gets us close enough to get a nice snug fit. So we're going to do a 15 thou finish cut pass on it and see where that gets us. Just adjust that down a little bit. So we're going to cut the other way for this. So let's see if this worked. Still a little big. Better be a little big than a little small. See where we're at. 432. Yeah. Let's take another 5 thou and see where we get from there. Oh, real tight, but that might actually be a decent press fit, but we want this thing to be movable, or removable I should say. Yep, 0.427, that's like 0.426, 427. So let's take a real tiny skim cut on it, like 0.02 of an inch. Tiny cut. Or if we can make this thing just slip in real snug. It's still capable of being pushed out. Perfect. So if anyone wants to see what the bore is, the bore of this thing, if you ever cut one of these open yourself, is around 0.425. I'm 0.425 right here, so might be a little bit more than that, but that's where you're going to meet bore in these Rams for the G7s. Yeah, perfect. So now we got to cut the hole, we got to drill the hole in the middle, and this piece here is basically 8mm, but I don't have a reamer that's 8mm. The best thing I have is 5/16. So we're going to just try to make that work. See if we're framed up still. A little hard to see. So let's move you guys over to here for the drilling operation. See if you can get focused in there. Down a little bit. Just put a starter pilot hole in it to start. Grab my drill bit. I'm using a letter bit first, an end bit, and then a 5/16 reamer. depth right now. We're just going to cut this off and face the other side. Let me make sure it's the right size before I fuck something up and have to redo the piece. .3135. So it's a little bit more than 5/16, 0.298. So if I go a little slow, might have to tweak my the straightness of my tailstock slightly. Try to get it to cut a little skewed to make the 8mm mark. Try to get nice chip break like that. Not exactly perfect, but I'm doing it by hand. Let's just see how deep I made this so I'm not bottoming out my reamer. .8, so if my reamer goes 3/4, it's a 5/16 inch reamer. This is a Chinese straight reamer. So the sizing is a little fucked out, it's not perfect. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll get it to be perfect for what we actually need it to be. Set that at 0. Touch down gently. I'm going to spin this by hand once just because I touched in and I don't want to break the reamer. So spin it by hand a little bit. A little too fast for a reamer as well. Let's go a little slower. And we'll bring this reamer in 3/4 of an inch just so we don't hit bottom. Smooth in one pass. Halfway. The surface finish is really nice. I don't know if the hole's big enough though. Just a little tight. So now let's just caulk with it a little bit. I don't really care about this reamer. Get myself slightly out of square to try to get this edge to cut in a little bit and bite. Let me grab an adjustable. In a perfect world, I just have an 8mm ream and it would work, but I don't want to cut my boring board to make that work, so. See if we can get slightly out of plumb and get a little more cut on it. maybe it's enough, and maybe I could just polish it the rest of the way home. Just too tight. So I'm going to change strategies here. I might try to make a boring bar work. And be right back. I don't want to waste all the battery on this. So I don't have an 8mm reamer or a way to do it, but I do have this 8mm end mill that I just found. This little ball nose end mill. So it's not ideal, but this should work pretty well. So I straightened out my tailstock again. And let's clear the chips because it can't go all the way. Go back in real quick. Get to the bottom. So there's a pretty decent surface finish in there as well. And it's round, which is good. Ooh, and that fits the way I want it to. Okay. So, I'm going to cut it off. It's a little loose, and I want it a little loose because this is the pivot section. Focus. This section that pivots, so it needs to be able to rotate a little bit. And yeah, that's not bad. Wish I would have seen that in the beginning, but that's fine. I'm going to cut this off and pull this out of the way, cut this off, flip it around, get it to size, and then we'll get it in the apparatus. And then we will have to drill a hole through it so we can put the pin or bolt back in it and get the ram assembled. So hold on a second. Alright, I switched over to my little lathe that holds these little things a little better. It's not exactly the most accurate lathe, so I would not like to do a lot of work on it, but for something like facing this, we can get it done pretty well. Nice and slow. Leave our part is faced. I'm going to come in here with this tool right here and just clean up that edge that we left. I don't think I'm going to turn it on. Just bring it in. Just knock that edge off by hand. Still got a little bit of edge left, so I just cleaned that up with a deburring tool. Bring this out. So we got a little bit of edge left. We'll grab it with a deburring tool. I gotta sand the outside of it. And so that's it for this part. We'll deburr it. We'll get it ready to put back in the marker. And I'll do the drilling process next. Okay guys, back downstairs. Sorry about it a little bit. I meant to get the part where we drilled and tapped into the piece we just made here, our little spacer ring, but my camera died upstairs on that one. Sorry about that. What we did is we drilled it and then we tapped it for a 6/32 screw, which works perfectly with this setup here. That allows this to fully open and close the way it's supposed to, and allows us to keep this thing rebuildable. So now we're going to polish up, I'm going to show you I polished up the shaft and all that stuff, and then we're going to polish up the front spacer up here, and we'll polish up everything we made. So if anyone's interested, it's just a 6/32 flat tipped set screw. I think this one's a 1/4 inch long, and it fits pretty perfectly in there. So as you can see, the ram's been polished up very nicely. Very, very smooth. Next we're going to polish up the brass ring here. I polished up this piece as well. I'll polish up this, and then we'll be good. We don't really have to polish the outside of it. It's pretty nice the way it is. So let's just get our polishing going. Feeling a bit of heat. I'm getting all the way, which is great. Putting a lot of heat in the part. We gotta check that bore. Real shiny looking. I don't know if I can actually... The hell did you get there? That is warm, but... Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Woo. Getting a little hot on that end. Now we can polish this all we want, but we really have to focus on getting all the polishing compound out of here after it's all done. It's a pretty hard task usually. I'll slip you back in. Beautiful. Beautifully shiny. Perfect. Come on. Looks great. Perfectly smooth. That is still quite hot. Yeah, that looks great as well. Our shaft's pretty good. Scuffed it up a tiny bit. lot of load in the bearing on this little Dremel tool. So I really like this Proxxon tool. Definitely a very stout little Dremel. Oh yeah, that looks great. Whew. That feels beautiful. So now comes the hardest part. It's getting all the polishing wax off of everything that it needs to be off of. We'll use our isopropylene alcohol. So if you don't get this polishing compound off, what it is it's microscopically, it will start tearing away at your seals and the surface. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to be an abrasive, but a very, very light abrasive. So it's capable of polishing and making things shiny, but it's still abrasive. So you want to get this stuff off. You can see it in the rag, which is great. That's why I like using these microfibers with alcohol to get this stuff gone. I want to get it off of here as well. Just make sure I put these down, doesn't have any more of this stuff on it. I'm being overly anal about this, but it's the way you want to work with this kind of stuff. The alcohol is just going to flash off, so that's fine with time, but this actual polishing compound, you don't want it anywhere near anything that's going to keep moving. Got some polishing gunk in there still. You always got to look in your O-ring glands, because that stuff kind of builds up in there. This piece isn't super critical, but we still don't want any of that shit in there if we don't need it. So I was lightly scratching it off to break it off. This is a steel piece, so I'm not doing it any harm with doing this, what I'm doing right now. Just make sure that's good in there. Still a tiny bit. All right, now the easy parts are clean. Put those off to the side like that. Let's try to clean off the harder stuff. Start with our spacer. Now what we're gonna do to try to get this inside clean is take the Dremel again. I grab some stuff from my toolbox. We'll have that gun. I like using Q-tips to do both this and to polish. You can polish up real tiny things real nice with the Q-tip, as well as clean. One's gone. Woo. They are a little dangerous because they're not very strong. They do work very well. Pretty good now. Pretty happy with that. Just get in there with this. That piece is good. I gotta do inside of here. We'll start with the big rag. This is a much bigger opening. We really need to clean out inside this thing. Make a smaller piece. What a good surface finish we got in there. Let's make sure we got no residue left. Got a little bit. Jeez. Wear your safety glasses with this, guys. I'll just keep playing this out. It's not going to be much more informative than it is now, but I figure we make long videos anyway, so let's just keep making it long. Nice and clean on that end. So it needs a little more work. It's pre-dipper. I love doing this to like autococker 3-ways, like the old brass ones. It's definitely the best way to polish them. Well, didn't pick anything up, which is nice. Nice and clean. So that's great. Let's flush it out one more time. We're going to put this thing through one more time just to be sure. I feel pretty confident that we clean this thing up to the best of our ability. All right. Alright guys, so we're back. I took a little bit of time trying to get the correct fitment on the O-rings. These aren't exactly O-rings that are common sizes, or at least the common size ones really didn't fit too well. One O-ring I did put in that's common size, this is an 005. And this is just a 70 durometer. The original one in it was the poly O-rings, so it was pretty hard durometer. An 004 would probably fit in there a little bit nicer. But the 005 makes it so you can't compress it till the metal hits the metal, which is what you want to have. So it's just a standard 70 durometer 005 in the back here. Now when I tried to do the standard O-rings for these two, it didn't work as well. So I had to go to the metric sizes, and these are a bunch of different metric sizes, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to get the metric, but I did find a couple sizes that I liked. I did a lot of experimentation to get the sizes that I really wanted on there. I'm going to start out with a 1.9 millimeter width by 4.2 millimeter inner diameter, which we're going to use on the front O-ring here. And this is a little fat for this O-ring, but these are fat O-ring glands. If you're used to the A1, those glands are a lot thinner, and they use a lot thinner O-rings than this particular one used. But I like this size. It gives me just enough friction, because this is still has to be used as the front O-ring, and it also gets used as the little momentary seal. So it's got a little bit of pop, and it just feels right. I love the feel of that. It can't go in fully on its own, but you press it lightly and it goes through. So I really enjoyed that O-ring for that one. Now the back O-ring gave me more of a problems. Two sizes that are close is a 1.78 millimeter wide by 6.75 ID O-ring, and a 1.8 millimeter wide by 6.7 millimeter ID O-ring, which very small differences in size, but the 1.78 O-ring is just a hair too thin for this bore. It just stretches a hair too much. So I don't like the way it goes, so we're going to use the 1.8 by 6.7. And it gives you a good seal. You can feel the plunger seal in it. Once we lube that up, it's going to be a nice seal. Coincidentally, this O-ring groove's a little bit fatter than this one. So we should use the 1.78 O-ring on this. In order to get this to go in nice and tight so it doesn't wiggle around, but still loose enough where you can play with it and move it out, because it is a part that has to move. So we got everything polished up. We got our O-rings on it. A little oil in there first. Now it's time to get some lube back on this stuff. That's why I like to dry fit them, because once you wet fit it, it's beautiful. Perfect. You want a little bit of stiction, just so you know that seal's working. And those sizes are great. That's a beautiful ram feel. So, this will be our last ring we need. We're going to slip our little piece on that we made, our little collar. Make sure to put the collar up. Now, if you remember, we did a 6/32 threaded set screw in here. It's too tight. That feels pretty good, pretty tight the way that is. Now, it's definitely not as strong as the original setup with the set screw, because it's stainless and it's a threaded screw instead of a steel pin. But a couple problems with that pin is it's not a hardened steel pin, so it's not a real good quality steel pin. It's and the force you have going backwards, we have what, 55 psi running through this gun, so the force acting in the forward direction is significantly more than the force coming back. Force coming back is relatively small because your surface area really isn't big because you have the big center shaft there. So you don't have huge surface area, so you don't have a whole lot pushing back and hitting this thing. But that is your crux point there, and if that ever does fail, we would have to change this apparatus system around. And we can make a much stronger apparatus if need be. But for the time being, that feels good. It looks good. Let's get more lube in there. That thing is moving beautifully. Get the hammer back on. And so, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to do this off camera because we've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to put this newly rebuilt ram back in the marker, and we'll go from there. I got to put the set screw in there still. I'm using it in this one because I didn't have a set screw on there. So put the set screw in there, put it back in the marker. We'll bring it outside, we'll chrono it, and we'll make sure it's good to go at 300 feet per second. This next video you're going to see outside. Okay guys, we're outside with the marker. We just put the ram back in it. Flick it on. Let's turn the chronograph on. Air it up and take a shot or two. Looks kind of fast. You guys see the chrono. 310. So 309, 303, 303, 307. That is great news because we were shooting too low earlier. I take that. That's pretty good. shooting the way it's supposed to. So, this took a while, but we got a result. We had to rebuild the RAM. It's kind of unique for a G7 Fly to need the RAM being rebuilt, but it happens. We got that. We got it shooting correctly. Awesome. All right, that's it for this video. I know it's been a long one. Hope you learned something with all the different things that we did with this. And yeah, that's it for now. Thank you guys. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, please, and we'll do some more stuff. See you later.